Hello and welcome. I apologize for our technical difficulties. Welcome to the official Jake 2000 Twitter follower live stream. I am the editor-in-chief of Jake, Ben Shahan. We have a great crowd for you tonight. I don't want to leave you guys waiting any longer to get started, so I'm going to introduce our first reader now. Our first reader is a poet from Columbia, Missouri. They have an army of geriatric cats and dogs and almost exclusively write their poems while sitting on rocks in creeks and glaring at people. They were also part of our first ever nomination series for Best of the Net here at Jake. Please welcome Kit Stites.
Hi, thank you. So I'm going to be reading 2 poems this evening or morning, wherever you are. And those poems were published at Jake on June 8th in 2022. And it's A Second Life and A New Fever. So A Second Life. The articulated skeleton of the rooster with his boiled chest, posed in a shoebox, in a proud arch. It's eerily appropriate for this arranged affair. Roots sprayed into his ribs, knit through earth, red clay. He becomes nutrients, tree marrow, and seeps into the sacred figs of an awakening tree. All right, and the second poem I'll be reading is A New Fever. Overnight, we are spring again. We loom under latticed tree branches. The fog rises and settles into the shadow of our early upstarts, impetuous beginnings with their toes wiggling in crusted snow. We are critical designers, dissecting the curved mollusk comb, exposed in the melted snow, the crushed slime beneath our heel, a slick broken salt mine. We are vindictive, glove ready, to untangle this hollow home and plant iris bulbs and daffodils. And that's all I've got for you.
Thank you, Kit. Thank you so much. Our next reader is an author and a filmmaker from Athens, Greece. She holds an MFA from Lindenwood University, and her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Ceased Cows, the first bullshit lit anthology, Crow and Cross Keys, and others. Please welcome Elia Kara.
Hi. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Kat and Laura, for having me. I'm gonna be reading two flash fiction pieces and a creative nonfiction piece. The first one is about my favorite band, My Chemical Romance. It was posted on July 21st, right after the concert in Sweden. So there we go. When Gerard Way steps on the tiny Gröna Lund stage in Stockholm on June 14, 2022, he is wearing what appears to be a holy poncho from another dimension. No one knows where this poncho came from, who brought it to our world, and what its motives are. Perhaps Gerard himself doesn't know. All we know is that its name is Doug. It tells us so with giant black letters it has vomited all over itself. Doug is a thing of beauty, a green of ancient forests, shimmering with the light of 1,000 distant stars, all woven in the sensible, water-repellent nylon fabric. Every time Gerard jumps and twists, Doug unfolds, reveals the galaxies and nebulae hidden in its pleats. They light up the night and blind us. They burn their image into our retinas, a blessing, a keepsake better than any tour shirt. After the gig, the most sought-after item is the green nylon poncho. Factories can't keep up with demand, and they begin to sell for hundreds of dollars on Depop and the black market. Some spray paint their savior's name on the front of their ponchos, reinventing themselves in its image. Others consider it a blasphemy, and the believers separate into 2 different factions within the first week. Reporters and believers alike gather outside the tour van daily. They want to know where Doug is. They want to know if Doug has a message for its devoted followers, if it's a force of good or evil, if it has chosen Gerard as its prophet. Mikey greets them with a smile, gently tells them they must go. They don't listen. They chant, we'll carry on, and pull the hoods over their heads in prayer in what has been established as the Ponchian way. It's only weeks later that Gerard emerges once more, yet again clad in Doug. Doug likes the attention, we think. In the reverent silence, we hear it buzz and hum the primordial tune of the universe. It's a hypnotic sound that reverberates through our bones and our flesh and our souls, and leaves us more than we were before. Mikey stands next to Gerard, one arm wrapped around his shoulders in solidarity. Doug's hood drapes over it like a lazy puppy, and we know he too, like Gerard, like us, has been chosen. Gerard doesn't say anything, but Doug does, in a low drone we only understand because it speaks to us in the oldest tongue in any world. Its stars and galaxies flash and burn like fireworks and neon lights and all things bright and beautiful, and we say yes, yes, you're the one we've been waiting for. So the second one is about skating, and specifically about Mike Osterman, who is a freestyle skateboard champion, and I'm so sorry to him if he ever finds this. I don't know, I have no excuses. So the thing about two-time freestyle skateboard champion Mike Osterman is that if you ask him to walk the dog, you'll have piss all over your house. And maybe you don't mind that. Maybe it's enough to watch Mike Osterman swivel the board under his feet, flashing the blues and greens and yellows of his deck. He can do it infinitely, a ceaseless loop of nose to tail, and he does. He stays on that skateboard month after month. The asphalt grinds his donut wheels down to their core. The crowd that gathers around him only grows. First a couple of neighborhood kids, then the neighborhood, then the whole town, all of them hypnotized by the rhythmic tap-tap-tapping of his wheels, the kaleidoscopic bursts of color. You are hypnotized too, every time he does this. Bark Ruffalo is forgotten at home, and you know he'll piss in every corner, chew your new $200 shoes to bits, and stare at the front door wondering why you left him all alone. Still, you are caught in Mike Osterman's gravitational pull like so many others. 1,000 planets against the burning sun. It's about time I stopped asking him to walk the damn dog, you think. He does it on purpose, you think. You've had enough arguments about it for him to know you're asking him to walk the actual dog, not perform his skate tricks. But you never tried to stop him once he's on the board. You couldn't even if you tried. He won't stop until he's ready to stop. You've lost track of time. Sometimes it lasts for a few days, others for months. Now it must have been years. You don't know when his hair turned gray or if yours is gray too. The wheels are all gone and the trucks rip out morsels of tar from the ground with every swing of his board, shoot them through the air like confetti. He'll stop, you think. He always stops. He'll stop this time too. You imagine him stepping off the tattered remains of his deck and burying them in the backyard under the pine. You imagine him smiling, though he only ever smiles, at the grit of a grip tape under the soles, the chants of his name, the eyes of the crowd. Saying grit of a grip tape 3 times really fast. And the third one is a creative nonfiction piece about how my school hated me and thought I was going to hell. So, it is a real story, by the way. It's completely real. Nothing about this is fictional. When I was 4 years old, I caught fire in a church. My then still favorite white puffer jacket engulfed in incandescence, the embroidery of a friendly bear on the back falling off the melting polyester in bits. Haze and smoke filled the church, smell of incense and burning tires and beeswax from the candles. I was a candle myself, set alight by the careless hand of the old woman next to me. Probably. No one saw what happened. One moment I wasn't on fire and the next moment I was. Later, when the initial shock wore off, I like to think that I had unlocked some superpower. It seemed fitting that it would be fire. It was the spark I never had. I could imagine my 90s transformation montage, going from the kid who always played alone to the king, not the queen, I didn't want to be a queen, of the playground. They would ask me to warm their hands and their lunches. They would bring me plastic spoons to melt. They would love to watch me. Later still, when I understood such things better, when I had already spent years in a Christian school, lectured daily about all my 10-year-old kid's sins, and after so long without another fire incident to confirm my superpower suspicions, I like to think that my spontaneous combustion was due to God not liking me very much. Perhaps my baptism didn't wash away the original sin. Perhaps I had done something unforgivable at 4 years old, like play Pokemon, the stuff of the devil, or curse at my mother when she forced me to throw the tattered remains of my beloved jacket in the trash, without so much as a eulogy. Or maybe God just knew I would grow up to be a piece of shit and wanted to nip it in the bud. I still like to think that sometimes. It's not as nice as throwing fireballs out of your hands, not as impressive, but it's something. My go-to thing to say when someone asks a fun fact about me, along with my bacon number, 3. I'd probably abuse a superpower anyway. So that was all from me. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Ben, and Laurel, and Kat, and yeah, see you later, guys.
Thank you. And so Jake's next reader's work has been published in Stories We Tell After Midnight, Volume 3, Allegory, Angel Rust, Drabble Dark 2, Mudroom, The Drabble, Flash Flood, Filth, The Sunlight Press, and Esoterica, with more coming this year in Sage Cigarettes and Flash Fiction magazine. So our next reader is Bethany Browning, and you can find her on Twitter at Buzzword Social and on her website, which is BethanyBrowning.com. Again, Buzzword Social and BethanyBrowning.com.
Can you see me?
We cannot see you, but we can hear you.
That's fine. So I'm Bethany. I am this. I am a writer. I have a couple of other announcements to make before I start reading. My debut novella, Sasquatch Baby, is available on Amazon currently, and the paperback will be out next week. But right now, you can get it as an ebook. And additionally, I am a co-writer on a feature film called War of the Wills, which is available now on Amazon as well. And I have a friend who will post all of those comments and links to that in the chat here on YouTube. And if we can't get my camera working, I guess I'll just keep going. Is this weird for everybody, or should we try to maybe hit a button? Let me see if this works. Oh, there I am. Can you guys see me? Okay. All right, we got thumbs up. Okay, good. Thank you for your patience. This is Bag Lady. Doghouse is different than Sniff, I said to the blinking couple in the Pet Palace pop-up shop at Crown and Hastings Market. I gave the tester a light squeeze. Bright citrus makes up the top note, supported by a base of cedar wood that peeps through during the dry down, I continued. Sniff isn't as nuanced. I think Emoji is a doghouse boy, the woman said, the words pulsing through her artificially inflated lips. Don't you, Kipton? The price, though, Bathory, Kipton responded, his forehead unmoving. What kind of dog is Emoji? I asked, other than a very good boy. This joke worked on everyone, every time. A Scooty Doodle? Bathory's uptalk confused me. I wasn't sure if she was asking me or telling me. He's like a scooter and a poodle and whatever. Words "that's not a thing" shoved their way one by one into my mouth like billiard balls, and I had to swallow hard to keep them from slipping out and bouncing all over the floor. Instead, I went with, you don't want Emoji to smell like a rescue, do you? The loathing I felt for these medically enhanced morons surged through my nervous system, an irritation so severe I feared I could break out in blisters all over my body. My crappy apartment wasn't going to pay for itself. As ever, I sealed the doghouse deal and cleared enough commission to afford a sandwich from the deli counter, which is why I came to work at Crown and Hastings in the first place. It was the kind of shop where trustafarians and trophy wives could acquire oat milk, pigeon eggs, and coffee beans that had been shat out by a civet cat. But the new owners of Crown and Hastings had also created pop-up shops for pets, floral and gifts, and any employee could earn commission by upselling specialty items to people with more money than sense. I was coming off of 10 years as an environmental activist with the Climate Underground, and I was ready to dip a toe into capitalism if it meant that I wouldn't get pepper sprayed in the face anymore. Entitled bougie assholes were part of the deal, which I accepted, until I couldn't. Mrs. Pringle wasn't the kind of old lady anyone would notice. She was under 5 feet tall with a rounded back. She came in every day for this and that, gluten-free bread, baking soda toothpaste, and at the end of every transaction, she'd ask for a plastic bag to carry her purchases home. Crown and Hastings charged $2 per plastic bag, certainly enough to discourage a senior citizen on a fixed income. I even offered to buy her a $15 reusable tote, sewn by women in developing countries who use the funds to get their fistulas sewn up. It was a great deal. I had 3. Plastic is fine, she said. Every day this happened, and every day it made me long for the nights I spent deep in logging country, loosening screws on fleets of knuckle-boom loaders. I'd lay awake, envisioning the carnage each one of Mrs. Pringle's bags was inflicting on the planet. Bags entangled in deer antlers. Bags trapped in trees in our city parks, flapping like sad windsocks. I winced when she appeared at my check stand. I rang up her tiny bottle of organic eye drops and took one last stab. Perhaps you'd like one of our reusable bags, I said. My treat. The smile never left her face as she said, Plastic is fine, sweetheart. I dug my nails deep into the flesh of my palms. I'm no sweetheart. I'm a climate justice warrior. Mrs. Pringle stopped to chat with my coworker Jaxley, her plastic bag with one item taunting me from across the store. My eyes burned holes in the back of her dowager's hump. And then, serendipity. Jaxley waved me over and said they'd take the rest of my shift. They wanted to get home late anyway since their partner was moving out and they didn't need any more of that drama, my good God. Normally I'd fight for my shifts because I was now as passionate about money as I was once about lobbing Molotov cocktails into truck dealerships. But this was a sign. I raced out of Crown and Hastings, got a beat on Mrs. Pringle and followed her home. Sneaking up on her was laughably easy. She couldn't hear worth a damn. When she opened the door, I gave her a small shove, just enough to tip her out of the way, and I slipped in right behind her. A confused, "Oh?" was the last sound Mrs. Pringle uttered. I can still hear the brittle, crinkling sound of the bag as I tightened the handles around her throat. She slumped to the parquet floor with no more intensity than a pile of laundry. The sigh of 1,000 spared shorebirds breezed through me as I pocketed the eye drops. Those old Climate Underground feelings were paying me a visit. The smell of homemade explosives, a phantom wrist pain from zip ties, fingers sore from sewing flags with made-up acronyms. I took a beat to observe her apartment. In my mind's eye, it had been cluttered with thousands of plastic bags, bags spilling out of drawers, bags filled with more bags. Instead, I found a tidy home with nary a speck of dust nor a pile of papers. Not a bag in sight. I'd stumbled into a secret I shouldn't know, but I couldn't unsee. A bag a day disappeared into thin air. Sleep was a wrestling match that night, and I wanted to call in sick. But I was already up and restless, so I brushed my teeth and hair and slouched my way to Crown and Hastings like a responsible adult. Jaxley was crying so hard their makeup was streaming down their face and pooling in their suprasternal notch. What's wrong? I asked. Mrs. Pringle died, they said through hiccup sobs. Were you close? A light breeze could have knocked me to my knees. They nodded and wiped their nose. My third grade teacher. I was frozen to my spot. She did take a lot of plastic bags. Even I couldn't believe I said that. Jaxley stopped breathing, their eyes narrowed. She picked up litter, they said through gritted teeth. Come again? I asked. A splash of nausea made itself known deep in my gut. Litter, Jaxley said, using their hands to emphasize the two syllables. Trash that people throw on the street? She used... What? Jaxley's piercings swam before me. Since her husband died, she spent every afternoon walking the neighborhoods. She filled a bag a day. Starbucks cups, Taco Bell sauce packets, needles. She even picked up dog shit. Other people's dog shit. I'm stunned. She'd bring anything that could be recycled to me. I'd refund her money for the bag and reuse it as a cat box liner. Jaxley's revelations hit me like a cop's baton. I guess I didn't know her. Jaxley leaned in so close I could see the Ankh tattoo on the inside of their lower lip. No, you fucking didn't. They turned and whisked away. The last I saw of Jaxley that day was the back of their dyed black head as they went home to mourn. I could feel the store clock ticking inside my bones, counting the minutes until I could scurry home and hide. My mind swam between justifying what I had done and feeling sorry for what I had done. Before I could bolt into traffic, Bathory and Kipton returned, in need of a new leash for Emoji. This one comes with a poop bag dispenser, I said. See, you put a little roll of plastic bags in here. Kipton and Bathory exchanged stifled smiles. I continued. You put your hand inside the bag, you pick up the poop, then turn it inside out. Keeps the parks and ponds free of disease and bacteria. I thought of Mrs. Pringle and fell into a chasm of remorse. Emoji has his shots, Bathory whined. Good fertilizer, am I right? Kipton said in a jocular tone that made my teeth ache. You just let your dog? I snapped my mouth shut before I lost the sale. Images of emoji shitting in public and these two stepping over the pile, leaving it for poor Mrs. Pringle, lit up my synapses like a Roman candle. My hands shook as I rang them up. Emoji, I growled under my breath as my nostrils tingled with the scent of kerosene. My eyes watered from the memory of pepper spray. And my new plan unfurled before me like a home-sewn flag emblazoned with made-up acronyms. That's Bag Lady. So thanks so much for letting me read, guys. I appreciate it. War of Wills on Amazon and Sasquatch Baby, which is exactly what you think it is. It was also available on Amazon as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Bethany. All right, now that the stream is functional, I want to take a moment to properly introduce the rest of us. We are Jake the Mag. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. It has really been already so far just listening to the readers we've got. A really special night. We've got tons of great readers left on our list for you. As I already introduced at the beginning, my name is Ben Shahan. I'm the editor-in-chief of Jake. Some of the other folks introducing people tonight who you have already seen are our flash fiction editor, C.M. Green, and our poetry editor, Laurel Reynolds. You can find all of us on Twitter in various places. I had the links up in the initial stream build. That has not found its way to this build yet. I will try to get them up for you guys by the end of the night. In case you want to follow any of our wonderful writers we have or any of us associated with the mag itself. In the meantime, I should introduce our next reader. Our next reader tonight is a Latinx Californian and award-winning journalist who lives in her hometown with her young son and husband. Her creative work has been published or is forthcoming from Punk Noir Magazine, Maudlin House, The Right Launch, Void Space Zine, Daily Drunk Magazine, and Rejection Letters, among others. Her creative nonfiction, Six Gunfights, received a Best of the Net nomination from Variant Lit. She has also served as a co-guest editor of Roy Faineant Press's first special issue, Heat, back in June 26 of 2022, and is now a reader and editor for the mag, which is a fantastic mag. You guys should definitely check out in your spare time as well. You can follow her on Twitter at Melissa Cuisine or at on Instagram at The Irish Months, and you can read more of her work at melissafloresandersonwrites.com. Please welcome Melissa Flores Anderson.
Sorry, trying to remember how to unmute myself here. I'm going to be reading a creative nonfiction piece that was published, I believe it was back in October, written about my son and my husband and something that happened at our house. So I'll just jump in. One dead day. What should we do with the body? My husband asked this on the side of our house next to the pink tea tree bushes where the west side of the wall is all in shade at the end of the day, even though we hadn't yet found any sort of body to speak of. We save everything to do with death, anything ugly, anything unsavory, for after our 4-year-old is asleep. Anything R-rated, like the latest episodes of Mayor of Easttown, which also coincidentally happened to deal with homicide. This probably wasn't a homicide. Maybe manslaughter, at worst, or negligence. The first sign of something wrong came when my mother dropped my 4-year-old son off. I answered the door to let her in, and she looked down at the pavement on our porch. Did someone get cut out here, she asked. I walked out onto the welcome mat without shoes and saw a few drips of red. Looks like blood, my mother said. I stepped back in and slipped my flip-flops on to get a closer look. A half moon of spattered blood stained the cement next to the hydrangea pot, and then dozens of drips pooled a few feet away, leading in a trail toward the lantana bush outside our front window. The drops disappeared into the tan bark, the brown colors too close to the dried red smears to distinguish. My son also inspected, bending his lanky frame in half so his face was inches from the cement. He touched a spot and sniffed his hand. Don't do that, baby, that's gross, I told him and pulled his still chubby hand into mine, dragging him into the house, while I called my husband away from his YouTube viewing of garden videos to inspect. I don't know what it is, I said. It wasn't here this morning. Maybe it was a lizard, my husband said. The smallest creature around he could think of to minimize the situation. That much blood for a lizard? Maybe a squirrel? The park across from us was 57 acres of open space with grasslands, wooded areas, and a creek full of wildlife. We saw bird species, lizards sunning on piles of mulch, jackrabbits bounding across overgrown wildflower fields, and hundreds of ground squirrels who created a patchwork of burrows we avoided on our walks. A few weeks before, a herd of baby squirrels took shelter in the drain pipe near our curb. They darted out like pinballs in a machine, unexpected and without rhythm, one after the other. My husband and I had joked that it was a matter of time before we hit one. Still seems like a lot of blood for a baby squirrel, I added. Maybe not if it lost a leg, my husband said, and peeked under the car he had driven to the store earlier that morning. But there was no sign of blood near the car. It started on our porch. I'll help you find it, Daddy, my son said. We can glue the leg back on. Let's deal with this later, I told my husband, not wanting to get my son started on dead things again. My son had been obsessed with death a few months earlier when his grandparents' dog collapsed on a walk to the park. At the start of the pandemic, my mother had gotten in the habit of bringing the dog over 3 times a week to walk with us. Cassidy was a 30-pound mutt, part Shiba Inu, part Staffordshire Terrier, and part Cajun. By the time my son came along, the dog had mellowed in her old age. She had grown accustomed to his grabby hands, and her failing hearing kept her calm around his shrieks. On the days my mother came over, my son held the leash for a block or so, and he would call her his best dog. When we planned his 4th birthday, the dog was the first added to the guest list. We knew the dog was getting older. She had a growth in her abdomen, non-cancerous, but something the vet had been watching for a couple years. She still loved her walks and dinner time and begging for table scraps, which were abundant around the kid. But for that last walk, we didn't make it to the park. The dog stopped walking and fell on her side outside the black gate of our development near the Mexican sage plants. Take him home, please, I told my sister, not wanting my son to see the dog die. She rushed my kid back through the gate. He was confused at the sudden change in direction. What's wrong with Cassidy? He asked as they ran home. Nobody answered him. My mom lifted the dog in her arms, her back arched out to handle the weight. The dog breathed heavily and whimpered, but didn't struggle. I took the dog from my mom halfway back to my house, her hot canine breath on my arm. The dog was 16 years old, part of the family longer than my son, longer than my husband. My parents took the dog to the vet, but she turned perky and wagged her tail, perhaps a ploy to get back home and die in peace. She did, later that evening after all the local vets closed for the day, in the living room of my parents' house. I received a tearful call as my parents loaded Cassidy into the car for one final trip to an emergency vet 45 miles north, her body no longer breathing. My son deep asleep in his bed, I cried quietly while his lullabies played over the baby monitor. My husband turned off the TV and moved from the couch to sit next to me on the love seat. He didn't say anything, but put his heavy arm around my shoulders. He knows how I grieve. He's comforted me through the suicide of an ex, the miscarriages of our siblings, my own despair when I returned from a doctor's appointment and told him that the doctor said my chances of conceiving again were slim. He didn't hand me a tissue or offer words of comfort. He let me cry deep sobs that caught in my chest, my face ugly and red, until I got out the primordial howl. Then, congested and tired, I recounted the memories in the shape of what I lost. I waited 3 days to talk to my son about the dog. Cassidy died, so when we go to Grandma and Grandpa's now, you won't see her anymore, I told him as he held on to a stuffed cat. She won't come to our house anymore. Where did she go? My son asked. She's gone, I said. Her body stopped working and she died. He walked away from me and went back to playing. When we visited my parents next, he didn't ask about the dog. Maybe he's just too young to get it. Guess I worried about talking to him for nothing. Then death started creeping into his play. Meet the cat's mama and daddy died, so I have to take care of him now, he told me one morning as we cuddled in bed and he clutched a ragged blue stuffed cat. And another day he said, I found some baby dinosaurs at the park, but their mommy and daddy died, so I tried to bring them home. That was nice of you, I told him and kissed his soft brown hair. Then one morning as we cuddled in bed, it came out. I don't want you to die, Mama. There it was, his fear of mortality ignited. I hope I'll be around with you for a long time, I told him and squeezed him a little bit closer. For the next week, I snuck back into his room hours after he was asleep to kiss his warm cheeks and whisper, "I love you, baby." The death talk had subsided when, lo and behold, a trail of blood brought it back to our front door. "What died outside, Mama?" he asked me at bedtime. "Was it a lizard?" "I don't know. Let's just sing a song. It's time for bed." But he's my son, and his mind is hard to shut off when it's filled with worry or anticipation. I sang one of his favorite songs, "Oh, My Darling, Clementine." Glad for a moment. He doesn't know. It's about someone drowning. "I hope Pete the cat never gets dead," he said as I tucked him under his dinosaur sheets and duvet. "You will keep him safe, sweetheart." After I turned on his nightlight and lullaby CD, I went back downstairs. "Should we look around before it gets too dark?" I asked my husband. "I'd hate for the baby to find something when we go out for a walk tomorrow." My husband searched around under the bushes with a pair of bright yellow gardening gloves. I stood at the curb, not close enough to see if he found anything. It's part of our division of labor. I talk about dead things with our son, and he cleans them up. "You think it could have been something bigger, maybe a cat or a dog?" "If I hit a dog, I would have known," he said. "Well, maybe it was someone trying to move the planter to see if there was a key." It was a fear I'd been holding in all day. The person could have smashed their hand on the heavy pot and started bleeding. "You think someone would try to break in the middle of the day with our cars in the driveway?" "I'm sure it was a squirrel." I still thought it looked like a lot of blood, but I have no idea the volume of blood that might be in a squirrel. "Maybe it was one of those guys who keeps trying to sell us a security system," I said. "It's a scare tactic to drip blood across someone's porch a few days after a cold call. Our neighbors had cameras pointed around their houses for a 360-degree view, but we relied on a chain lock and a wooden dowel lodged in the sliding glass door." "You and your conspiracies," my husband said, and shook his head at me. Then I noticed a drop of blood on the light pavement of the curb. "The trail starts up here," I pointed down toward the brown drop of blood. The drips led across the street to the black fence that divides our development from the park, meant to keep humans out, but permeable to small creatures. "I guess the body isn't our problem then," my husband said, as he straightened up and pulled the garden gloves off. The next morning when I went out for a run, the drips of blood picked up again in the cul-de-sac near the temporary fire station before they disappeared into the grass. As my husband predicted, turkey vultures circled overhead. People walked by with their dogs and children in strollers, oblivious to the hurt on the horizon.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That wonderful piece. Our next reader tonight holds an MA in English from the University of Maine. She is the author of a collection of short stories called My Haunted Home from FC2 and the chapbook Death and Darlings from Bottle Cap Press. Overall, she hopes to discomfort, humor, and charm, and she is Victoria Hood. Victoria, take it away.
Hey, can you hear me all right? Awesome. Thank you for having me tonight. I am going to start by reading a creative nonfiction piece that I wrote to my now husband. It's titled, "I'm Sorry We're Getting Married." "I love you, Harry, and of course I would marry you again, but maybe we should have waited. We could have waited until people did not ask if we meant it, if we thought it through. We could have waited until we had the courage to get what we wanted, or the money to feel like we had an opinion. I love you, Harry, but maybe we should have waited until 30. That seems to be when people say it's okay." How much of this is personal anxiety, my constant fear of commitment that I combat with non-monogamy. I know some of it, though, is the whispers of our friends who seem to smirk at the idea that 5 years was long enough or 24 was old enough. I wonder how you're feeling. You always seem so sure. It's not that I wonder about you, but that I wonder about age and if it matters. I love you, Harry, and I'm excited that we can be married most of our lives. What does that mean, though, when we can already love each other for most of our lives, whether the government is involved or not? I love you, Harry, but now I'm thinking we could have made a statement, a political social commentary on the institution of marriage by refusing to succumb. I love you, Harry, and I'm wondering what, if any, amount of rebellion is on our shoulders. Are we supposed to decline the expected to make a point? Who will do it if we don't? But the truth is that I love you, Harry, and I want to be the one to decide when to pull the plug in the hospital because I know you better than anyone. I wonder why I bothered to want to get married if I knew that I would never want to stop having sex with strangers. It's not just me. There are other relationships, other people, other marriages that opt for a sense of openness, a shirk at the concept that you could have one dick or one cunt forever. I love you, Harry, because you too are one of those people. I love you, Harry, and now I'm thinking that we could have waited until I knew if I was done going back and back and back to school. But then there's the question of insurance in a country that doesn't care if you live unless you've decided to marry someone who can help you. I love you, Harry, and I'm wondering if it's insurance fraud to marry even though you don't believe in the institution of marriage. But you are a bartender, and someone needs to bring home the healthcare. I love you, Harry, and I wonder if we would have called it off by now if your parents were not religious, or if they hadn't put in so much money. We've talked about it before, how our wedding is not the one we are having, but that is okay because we are the spouse that we wanted. I love you, Harry, but we're not even sure if we want kids anymore. Wasn't that the first reason we gave? If we want kids, we might as well make it easier and get married, but now we never seem to agree. When I want kids, you don't. When you want kids, I don't. I think about the disappointment it would be to our families, your parents. I love you, Harry, but maybe we're doing ourselves a favor. If we don't have kids, then we don't have to disappoint your parents, even more with the fact that they won't take your last name or mine. Rather, we want to combine. I love you, Harry, but I'm nervous that once we told your parents we wouldn't baptize our children, they will look for a daughter-in-law elsewhere. I'm nervous they would scoop you up and take you out of my life. I love you, Harry, but I've always had control issues, and you can't control a child. Not in the way that I want to control. A child is a person and not an extension of me. They're an individual, and individuals scare me. I love you, Harry, but I think I've answered my question. Maybe I answered yours as well. Either way, however we think, I will see you at the wedding in July. This next piece I'm going to read is a flash fiction piece that I wrote while falling in love with my other partner, Zach. Leaking. I don't want to leak out my memories onto your pillow. I've already left so much of me there. At night, I can feel my dreams crawl out and inject themselves into your side. I can feel the veins of the pillows pulsing through to each other. I can't afford to lose more of me to your sheets, washed away when laundry day comes. I try shoving toilet paper in my ears, but the roll never fits. I try to choke down a paper towel holder to furnish my body for you. Please clean up after yourself, try not to make a mess. No matter how many paper products I fill myself with, I can feel them all spill out on your bed. I can feel them crumble and mold before my head hits the pillow. I try not to think of things I want to keep hidden, but of course then that is all I will think of. I don't want you to see the high school fights or the fear of losing a friend group that you'll never meet. I want to hide away all the feelings of not being enough in school and shove it under the rug where I keep my feelings of not being enough for you. I superglue the edges to make sure none of them escape, but that doesn't stop your crowbar. The way your hand traces my body, I ooze with wanting, I drip with secrets, I am soaked with impatience. Touch me and I'll lose all my insides. If you linger over me, then I just might emulsify. Then you can wash me out of your sheets. And this last piece is a nonfiction story that I wrote about both of my partners. My sticky sweets. The first time I saw you, you were talking about the bloody handprints on the walls, Halloween decorations that you lined your own hand up to. You joked about the way in which these handprints were unrealistic. We were so young then, not even double digits. The first time I saw you, you came to a party at my apartment. Relentlessly a friend of a friend, both of us in non-monogamous relationships, neither of us knowing about the other. Anytime you would laugh, the whole room would stop to listen. You never seemed to leave my peripheral vision since then. Always in the same grade, always at the same school, sometimes in the same class, often at the same venue, you playing the same routes as my brother, me always enamored by you. You never seemed to leave my peripheral vision since then. Always at my parties, always you with your best friend who is dating my best friend. Sometimes we would see each other around town. Often it was only in my house in brief moments of connection. It was when I left for college that we became closer, that you snuck your way into my skin like an IV drip. I remember waiting for the messenger alarm to sound on my phone. I remember waiting to find more words from you. Now I wake up to your words in the morning, surrounded by our elderly cat. It was when the party was small that we couldn't help but sit together, that you snuck your way into my skin like an IV drip. I remember waiting for my Snapchat to tell me you were typing, to tell me that you were thinking of me again. Now I wake up to your alarm, a time we agreed upon, and we snuggle as we watch your curated meme collection. In the spaces between the two of you, I snuggle up for comfort. I always knew it would be possible for me to fall in love with two people at once. I knew the whole time that my love does not end. It is a well with no bottom. I can put all of me into more than one. I always knew I could handle it, but I never knew if it would happen. I never knew two of you could exist in such perfect forms that you both take my breath away. I'm wheezing and gasping and dying to know all of you. There is an overlap in timelines, but it is not a perfect circle. I have known one longer and one shorter, but we all know that time is a construct. We all know that at the end of this, we will all just be piles of skin that we're just trying to sew ourselves together. So how do you fall in love again when you've already done it once? How do you etch someone into the glasses you've already carved? It always just seems to appear. I have love oozing out of my fingertips, sappy and sugary. I let it rub off on the people I care about. I douse my friends with my sticky sweet. It just so happens you couldn't escape it. It just so happens you were leaking too. It just so happens that we were both just here together and neither of us want to leave. My sticky sweet loves, the people I collect in batches like they are cake coming out of the oven. With the two of you in my mind, it never wants to stop smiling. Two parts of me that never wanted to agree seem to open up and stitch themselves together. Independently, you would both be enough, always, always, always. But conjoined in my heart, I am so swollen I cannot contain myself. If time is cyclical, if I have to keep living this timeline again and again, I couldn't imagine it without either of you. I don't think I could untie my boat from your dock. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Victoria. So, our next reader is from Nanaimo, British Columbia. She lived in an RV and traveled extensively around North America for several years. But after selling her majestic home on wheels last year, she is living part-time here and there while maintaining a primary residence in Canada. Her work has appeared in print and online journals in English and Spanish. She unravels day-to-day events, finding inspiration to meet the words climbing out of her mind. On writing, she says, "Write the life we live, explore the lessons not yet learned, and then eat catharsis for dinner." Our next reader is Kim KJ again Mose. Kim, you're still muted.
I was doing that on purpose. No, I'm kidding. Anyways, here I am. I'm Kim, trying to save face. But yes, thanks for having me. I'm here to share a little poem with you that I wrote last year. A lot of people in mind when I wrote it, like Sneaky Pete, Fireman Dave, Derek the Artist, Serena the Muse, many more. And I just want to share it with you. Here we go. This is called The Jewel on Main. It was the night of your funeral, and all through the jewel, I can still see you sitting like a lump on the stool. Day in and day out, we'd slam down our beers. I still cannot fathom why you're not seated here. It wasn't your liver, though we had bets whose was worse. The odds always in favor that you'd never go first. It wasn't your heart, though it's been broken many times, and it wasn't your sugar from drinking outside the lines. It wasn't from smoking you quit when forced outside, nor was it your cholesterol, though you enjoyed your foods fried. It wasn't from when you bailed and bruised your spleen. And it wasn't a drunk driver, oh, what the irony that would have been. It was a sliver from the bar top that you first showed off with pride. It got so infected, it caused you to die. You hid it from everyone till sepsis took over. We are here to celebrate you, man, to find us some closure. It's last call at your funeral and all through the jewel. I can still see you sitting like a lump on your stool. Day in and day out, we used to slam down our beers. It'll never be the same without you seated right here. Thank you. That's
Excellent.
all I have.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kim. That was great. All right. We have just a few more readers for you all tonight. I hope you guys are enjoying all the wonderful fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. As a reminder, you can read all of these pieces in full right now at jakethemag.com. They will be up for as long as the site still exists. So if you want to sort of take a look at sort of what the more detailed versions of some of these pieces are that have been truncated for a live reading experience, feel free to check it out after the end of the stream. Our next reader tonight enjoys long walks in the city on rainy Mondays. He is the nonfiction editor at 5 South Magazine and writes words that can be found in places like Bivouac Magazine, Atlantic Northeast, The Argonaut, Roy Finayant Press, and Boats Against the Current. You can follow him at Dave Nash Lit 1 on Twitter. Please welcome Dave Nash.
Hold on. Make sure the video's on. Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Oh, cool. Okay. So I'm going to read a couple things. See how it goes. The first is called the Sound of Music. I just had this obsession with the Pied Piper, so I wrote a flash about it. Dewdrops shimmered to the sound of Sunday morning coming down to the town of Henry. The sing-song of the dawn registered for the sober, who beheld the Pied Piper bow just like he stood. But what was he here for? The itinerant minstrel wore a blue and gray checkered shirt under a flowing cloak, red and orange. No doubt he had a youth that was firm. But imagine a child who never saw death, who never saw lies unravel, never saw rage in the father's face. Now suppose how that child would speak. High in pitch, rapid in rhythm, excited in movement, joyous in theme. So naive, so the mayor supposed. The melody moved Hannah and Juliet, who followed free of the weight of unsupported expectations. The cocktail chorus picked up a procession with the sisters holding hands. They were waltzing in the forms they'd been taught. Then they shed those structures to match the tune's movement and the theme's progression. The Pied Piper inspired them to dismantle their memories of their mothers and brothers who they lost to the plague, freeing their empathies like beating swords into plowshares, leaving yesterday's despondencies for tomorrow's expectancies. His new notes plucked all these, all who had not embiggened from the adults, who, if believed, were in church during this parade of sorts down the Oststrasse. For we know how the wicked clothe their faults with the threads of righteousness. Motley youths marched towards possibility in fine order, but they had to stop when their path met the wide water. Hannah inferred that they could not return, nor could they cross for its current's course virulent. That's what stalled their exodus. Downstream led to cities that prevented the pestilence, and would not welcome them with pleasantness. Upstream led to flows brooding malevolence, and they were townsfolk, weaponless. The shimmer spoke to Hannah as she placed her hand on Piper's back. His sorrow soothed the waters. He danced on its surface, a divine shell, beguiling its currents, guiding the tempo, dividing the river's flow. The troop tramped across the parted bed as she spun Piper about on the west bank. She could not leave even a few, for it was written, "Those whom you gave me I have kept, and none is lost, but one." That's when she saw Juliet, halting half wet, and Hannah searched in her sister's eyes, and knew. Piper played at Hannah's direction, turning west, and, like the river, resumed the quest. Okay, and so I'm going to do another poem. I actually had this published this week, so it was nice. It's called I Think of You. When your grandson comes down in the morning, and I know that's your gift, he's willing because because only you would search and search for the perfect PJs. When I crack eggs, mix flour, butter, water, listen to the sizzle and study the pancakes for the golden brown, remembering our big holiday breakfast, when a friend stops by for coffee and recalls your kindness and how you helped. When I think to call you about what the boys said, where there's a too cute picture I have to share. A new show in the city, we should go. Let's try this restaurant. I'll meet you at Grand Central by the clock. And that's when I realize you're not coming back from this vacation. And then I remember to hand wash these pajamas. Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much, Dave, for those great pieces. Our next reader tonight is a writer living in Madison, Wisconsin. His work has appeared in Bending Genres, Was, Had, Maudlin House Rejection Letters, Misery Tourism, and the Bear Creek Gazette, among others. He was the winner of the 2019 UW-Madison Writers Institute Poem or Page Competition in the category of literary fiction, and his unpublished novel, Bridgeport Nowhere, was shortlisted for the 2022 Santa Fe Writers Project Literary Award. His debut novel, Breakneck, or It Happened Once in America, is forthcoming from Anxiety Press in early 2023. He is also the author of the novelette, All Burned Down, forthcoming in October 2023 from Emerge Press, and his second novel, Awful People, A Ghost Story, is coming in early 2024 from Death of Print Books. He holds a GED from the Wisconsin Department of Public Institution and a BS in English Literature from Edgewood College, and he tweets at S. Mitchell May. This is Scott Mitchell May. Take it away.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it. I'll be reading some chunks from a piece called Clicky Thing, a modern product review of the Carhartt Relaxed Fit Wash Duck Sherpa lined utility jacket with a 2 warmer rating. So I bought a Carhartt Relaxed Fit Wash Duck Sherpa lined utility jacket with a 2 warmer rating, whatever that means. And that's where all the trouble began. I bought this jacket because up until around January 1, I'd been wearing my black, oversized Carhartt zip-up hoodie as a jacket, and I really like both the look and feel of it. First, it's baggy, and I essentially can forget I have an outer layer on when I'm wearing it. The cuffs are loose about the wrists, too, which as it turns out is something I value that I didn't realize I valued. Next, the hood is big and wide and doesn't hug the sides of my head, and when I put it up, I can kind of hide a little bit. I have found myself wearing this hoodie pretty much 24/7 since I got it, and have also been finding myself with the hood up more often than not, even while I'm in my house with the heat on. I am not opposed to setting the heat to a reasonable temperature, like some Midwestern males. That is not a source of pride for me, and neither is not wearing a proper jacket. I do like feeling comfortable, and that is, I think, the biggest issue with the Carhartt Relaxed Fit Wash Duck Sherpa Line utility jacket with the 2 warmer rating. But first, I think I ought to tell you a little bit about how excited I was to get the Carhartt Relaxed Fit Wash Duck Sherpa Line utility jacket with the 2 warmer rating. You see, lately I've been trying to only buy things that make me feel good when I see them. I've been stuck in the last few years in a sort of panic buying state when considering anything that I have to wear. It comes from years of working in a place where there was a certain expectation for how males dressed, and that expectation not fitting what makes me feel good and comfortable and confident. And it's not as if I was trying to wear sweats and flip-flops to the office, but my style, what I gravitate towards too naturally, has always had a bit of an edge to it. And as the years went along, that was just sort of eroded away. And this also coincided with meeting my wife, who got to know me in the great middle of that career, and thus only knew my professional look. But now I work in beer, and they don't care how I dress as long as it's clean and put together and not like outwardly offensive, which honestly is not too much to ask of adults. So I've been relaxing a bit back into my natural state, but it's been a journey. And I found myself panicking in stores because I no longer know what I like, but also because now there's a false expectation of what I like that my family is coming to realize is no longer the case. So for like 2 years, I'd just panic and buy stuff that fit the old paradigm and then be discontented when I got the stuff home and then had to wear the stuff. But the Carhartt Relaxed Fit Wash Duck Sherpa lined utility jacket with a 2 warmer rating looked exactly like something I'd never regret buying. I ordered it and was very happy waiting for it. Between the time I ordered the jacket directly from Carhartt and the time it arrived, the weather had warmed up enough to stay somewhere between 25 and 30 degrees fairly consistently. which is not winter jacket weather as far as I'm concerned. I continued to just wear my hoodie for some weeks while my brand new Carhartt Relax Fit Duck Sherpa-lined utility jacket with a 2-warmer rating hung in the closet and, in all fairness, did look really cool. The problem arose after it got cold again. But another thing you might need to know about me, as some necessary context for this product review, is that I never try on clothes before I buy them. This used to be a huge issue back in the day when I used to have to go to stores and look for things I may like, and then purchase them and take them home. Moms and wives always want you to try on clothes before you buy them. And that is fair. It makes sense. But something about it makes me deeply uncomfortable. Maybe it's the small changing rooms. Maybe it's getting nearly naked in public. Maybe it's the feeling of being put on the spot and having to decide right then and there that this is something that I not only like, but would wear consistently, at least often enough to justify the cost. And what if it doesn't fit? I might be disappointing people waiting for me to try it on. Or what if it does fit but feels odd against my skin or pinches in at weird places and that makes me aware of the garment I am wearing and I feel odd while wearing it. And I am not sure if the awareness and discomfort simply stems from the fact that the garment is new to me and I am unused to it. And I can't keep up the wearing it because of how aware I am that I am wearing it when I am wearing it. It's probably that. Which is why I began ordering things I know I need online and having them delivered. I buy the same 2 pair of Dickies, one brown, one black, and Levi's about once a year on average. I can get t-shirts from Target because I'm either a Goodfellow medium or large, depending. This brings me to my product review of the Carhartt Relax Fit Wash Duck Sherpa-lined utility jacket with a 2-warmer rating. Okay, so like 3 or 4 weeks after I got the jacket, it got really cold in southern Wisconsin. Like between -1 and 10, which is when I think it's appropriate to wear a winter jacket. And I was very excited too because this winter jacket had the looks of just like a beefed up version of my hoodie. And that's where all the trouble truly began. The first thing is that when looking at the Carhartt Relax Fit Duck Sherpa-lined utility jacket with the 2-warmer rating, the sleeves appear to end in a loose cuff. This is ideal in a jacket for me because I do not like the feeling of things binding me at the wrist. However, what is not readily apparent is that the loose cuff is, in fact, hiding a much tighter cuff that is not visible when just looking at the jacket, and a person only can really tell it's there when they put the jacket on. Which, when I did that day, I was unpleasantly surprised. But I told myself this was okay. I'd spent a good amount of money on this jacket, and it had arrived weeks ago, and I'm pretty sure even if I could return it, I wouldn't because I'd feel awkward about it, and it would take me figuring out Carhartt's return policy, and then finding like a box or a bag or something as I'd thrown the original packaging material away the day I got it. I made a conscious choice that I would deal with the wrist cinching in thing and live with it. But then I zipped it up. When fully zipped, the Carhartt Relax Fit Wash Duck Sherpa-lined utility jacket with the 2-warmer ratings neckline comes all the way up to the chin. This is something some winter jackets do so that when the hood is deployed, it kind of sort of protects the lower half of the face as well, creating a sort of baklava, but not really. And in the Carhartt Relax Fit Wash Duck Sherpa-lined utility jacket with a 2-warmer rating, what with its stiff outer material, just sort of cinches and then pokes at the middle of the throat, especially when seated. When things are tight about my throat, it makes me feel like I have to puke. Couple that with the whole wrist cinch thing, and I'm completely aware that I'm wearing the jacket at all times it is on. But I persist. I decide I can just zip it up to the collarbone, leaving the top bit unzipped, and that does work in minimizing the whole throat choking sensation thing, but now I can feel the metal of the zipper on my neck, which makes me aware of the coat, but at least I don't feel like I have to puke, though it still feels a bit like being choked. It takes me 3 weeks of wearing the Carhartt Relax Fit Wash Duck Sherpa-lined utility jacket with the 2-warmer rating to get used to it and forget that I'm wearing it. And that is when the trouble begins. Again. So I have this 40-minute commute to work. It's an odd commute as far as commutes go. I commute from the city to a small town where my office is. This gives me time in the car to listen to podcasts and stop at Quick Trip and eat boneless chicken wings for breakfast. I was pulling out of the Quick Trip when I grabbed the drawstrings of my Carhartt Relax Fit Duck Sherpa-lined utility jacket with the 2-warmer ratings hood. I was doing this without thinking about it, and my hand followed the string up to the neckline of the jacket, still seeking, subconsciously, some solution to the whole not being able to zip the jacket all the way up thing. And that's when I found it, just beyond the little metal ring of the Carhartt Relax Fit Wash Duck Sherpa-lined utility jacket with the 2-warmer ratings hood strings fed through. A little plastic clicky thing. I have theories on what it is. The most obvious is that it is one of those pressure spring button jobs designed to pinch the hood string and prevent it from coming out, but the string itself doesn't seem to be fed through it. Also, the countless moment, also, after countless moments of feeling compelled to touch it, it doesn't seem to have a top button, the top button one would depress to alleviate the tension. There is a hollowness to it, though. When pressed, over and over, it clicks. This seems to be its function. There is a matching clicky thing on the other side, but its click is not as satisfying as the original clicky thing. It's more like a misshapen odd bit of useless plastic stuffed into the jacket for no reason at all. So now, whenever I wear the jacket, I find myself clicking the clicky thing on the left side of the hood, trying to suss out its function and failing. It's likely a manufacturer's error. It's likely I'm not supposed to touch it and play with it and become obsessed with it every time I wear the jacket. I can't wear the Carhartt Relaxed Fit Wash Duck Sherpa lined utility jacket with a 2 warmer rating without being completely aware I'm wearing the Carhartt Relaxed Fit Wash Duck Sherpa lined utility jacket with a 2 warmer rating. My wrists sweat. My neck feels like I'm being very lovingly and softly strangled to death by metal teeth, and my mind becomes a mess of clicky thing possibilities. And when I take it off, I feel the sweet relief of freedom and understand what it must be like for POWs to walk free. Bottom line, if you want a winter jacket that's not too heavy but still does a good job of keeping you warm even through Wisconsin's bitterest of winter days, you could do a lot worse than the Carhartt Relax Fit Wash Duck Sherpa lined utility jacket with a 2 warmer rating. 7 of 10. I would buy it again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott. So tonight, our final reader, sadly, it's come time. She comes from a wonderfully neurodiverse household in rural Northern Ireland. She has work published or forthcoming in Bending Genres, Intrepidus Inc., Roy Finest Press, The Metaworker, Splunk, and The Ergonaut, amongst others. She enjoys writing from a sensory perspective, so please welcome Mary Louise McGuinness.
Hello there. This is from an essay that was published there in April called Did Being Neurodivergent Mean I Hated Boy Bands and Mondays? So this is a truncated version. As the 1990s dawned and I entered the tween years, the popular music charts were an eclectic offering. The decade began with the 1980s penchant for the power ballad, the songs sung by strong voices that you could belt at full throttle, arms slung gaily around swinging necks while swaying to a slow and easy-to-follow rhythm. These songs were for the sociable, those wishing to connect, definitely not for me. They were everywhere. They sat on my neck and dripped uncomfortably down my spine. These were the grinding of teeth songs, the smack my head and cover my ears and scream songs. I never would have admitted the strength of my discomfort, lest the other girls would think me weird. This was also the age of manufactured boy bands, which for most girls my age was a push to obsess over pretty young men who could hold a tune and bust out the worm or headspin on request. Now it is widely known that autistic girls are very likely to engage in the practice of masking, and although completely unaware that I was doing it, I masked like the best of them. I could pick a member to faux crush on in order to keep my normal girl credibility. The one I would choose would never be the cute one, the funny one, or the talented one. No, I would always seek out the underdog, the one I could feel sorry for. Girl bands came later, when record bosses conceded that young girls didn't necessarily have to have a romantic fixation on a celebrity to buy into their product, especially when girl power was the message, and the girls were the cool girls, skinny and beautiful, and with a penchant for mischief that could match any boy. I was a little jealous of boys at this time. They had more innocence. Boys of the ages 10 to 14 weren't exploited in a way that girls were in the 1990s. They weren't marketed magazines that urged them to bypass their childhood in order to be popular, like we were with Ms. Smash Hits, Just 17 and the like. There was even one called My Guy, for goodness sake. Girls were bombarded with makeup tips and fluffy pieces about the latest marketable hunks. The magazines dictated what we should like, what we should wear, and what we should aspire to be, while the powers that be were content to allow the young boys those precious years with the Beano and Desperate Dan. I've always known that I was different, a little odd and shy, with a tendency for dark thoughts and macabre interests. But I only realised that I may be neurodiverse in 2015 at the ripe old age of 34. My son had been diagnosed with autism in early 2014, and after almost 2 years of assessment, and then I was told that it was a boy's thing. Someone even described it to me as a form of extreme maleness. It was purported that there was a causal link between testosterone and cognitive empathy. Therefore, even in the relatively recent 2015, I couldn't equate that condition with me, a reasonably bright woman who's married with children. It was only when I sat in an autism awareness class for parents that I realised that I could be autistic too. The topic was sensory issues in autism. I'm a sensory person. The mere thought of touching cotton wool spurs a swarm of goosebumps to clamber over my skin, and certain patterns in fabric make my stomach heave and my head spin. Noise can dance on my exposed nerves and set me into pure hyperventilating panic. Too much background noise negates my ability to focus. My mind becomes a blur of buzzing nothingness. When I first began listening to music for pleasure, the very first album I bought for myself was not one of the coveted "Now That's What I Call Music" compilations. It was Bob Geldof and the Boomtown Rats. I'd heard the song I Don't Like Mondays, and I was fascinated by the story of 16-year-old Brenda Ann Spencer, who shot a gun into a school playground in San Diego in 1979. It was a heinous story with a theme that is all too familiar nowadays. But at that time, it really grabbed my attention. I thought deeply about the reasons a young girl would do such a terrible thing. I would lie in bed at night and cry for the school children who must have been terrified. I cried for the adults who died. And I also cried for the young girl who fired a gun because she didn't like Mondays, and the act of killing livened the day. I see now that I just wanted to cry, to feel hurt and sadness, to swim in emotions that I didn't understand. In the mid-90s, I found myself getting to know a new group of girls who were a little more like me. They didn't fret about popularity, and their music tastes aligned with mine. They introduced me to bands such as Nirvana and Pearl Jam, Soundgarden before Black Hole Sun. It was a revelation to me. How I worshipped those depressed boys from the gloom grey of Seattle. Not for their looks or for any sexual attraction, but because they were free to express their melancholy and frustration with the world in a swirl of blue-black emotion. I felt their pain. We had sleepovers where we thrashed around bedrooms, hair swinging and without care of how we looked. We didn't seek to be pretty or sexually appealing to boys. We could be us without expectation of what girls should be. It was a homecoming of sorts. In a nightclub, we would headbang on a small crossword-painted dance floor, not caring that our hair would go frizzy in the sweaty humidity, that our cheeks would bloom red and glisten with the sweat rolling down the back of our warm necks. Over pints of cider and blackcurrant, long-haired boys and unimpressed girls discussed politics and the environment, the philosophies of Nietzsche, and share their aspirations to become marine biologists in order to save the whales. This was the club where the music was dark and the conversation deep, a safe haven for those who knew they were different. It was comfortable. An anthem for me at that time was Radiohead's Creep, a song that had been banned by the BBC after its release in 1992 for being too depressing. Which is depressing in itself, as this was a song that spoke to people like me, the outsiders, the self-loathers, the youth that didn't know who they were and sometimes wondered if they were anyone at all. That song got us. Whether we were exposed to that song or not didn't change the fact that many of us had experienced the black dog of depression or the isolation of bullying, but upon hearing it, we knew we weren't alone. Dr. David Greenberg, in a 2016 study, attributed the liking for intense music like Nirvana to neuroticism, and I say that's probably true to an extent. Neuroticism is the disposition to experience negative effects such as anxiety, self-consciousness, emotional instability, and depression, and these effects are often noted among the neurodiverse population, especially those who are underdiagnosed or late to the party as such. A pediatrician with a specialism in autism explained to me that autistic people, especially those with a typical or high IQ, are at a higher risk of mental health issues such as self-harm and eating disorders. These friends and I are middle-aged women now, and from what I can tell, we have all experienced some of these mental health issues since those heady days of our youth. I personally experienced all of them, and they were exacerbated awfully after experiencing trauma in my late teens. Looking back now, I often wonder if things would have been different if autism in girls was recognised then as it is today. Would I have been able to express myself without feeling less than my peers? Would the understanding of my neurodiversity have impeded the creep of low self-esteem and depression that clouded my youth? And could I have admitted that I too didn't like Mondays? Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mary Louise. That was fantastic. What a great way to end the night. Thank you all for staying out for all this great time. You can read, like I said before, all these great pieces at jakethemag.com. Follow us on Twitter at publishedbyjake or on Discord. Accessible through the site. You can submit to us on alita.io/publications/Jake if you would like your work to be featured alongside some of these great authors that we had tonight. And then lastly, I want to sort of make a shout out for our poetry editor, Laurel, who had to run. Their new chapbook is out now from Bottle Cap Features, and they are having a live reading Tuesday, May 16th at 6 p.m. At the Dendros office group in St. Paul, Minnesota. If any of you guys are in the area, they would love it if you came out and supported the release of that book. Again, thank you guys all so much for coming out. It has been a wonderful night. And join us for part 2 tomorrow. Hopefully this time will actually start at 9 o'clock as advertised. Thank you. Have a great night.